All right, fifth graders, here we go. Last few lessons, and we will be done for the year. And we have reached the end of the year review lessons. And so I don't think I need to do a whole lot with you because you know how to do everything now. You officially know everything, how to do everything in the fifth grade math book. And you all have done really well with these lessons, even before we had to break up and go to this form of teaching. You guys had a really good year, I think. You all did really well. And I think you've accomplished a lot this year, so congratulations. So let me just go through a few of these things, and I'll do this with the rest of the math lessons according to the lesson plans. Next Monday will be our last lesson in the book. So we have 5 lessons left. All right, so number 1, fill in the blanks to make equivalent fractions. Remember, in the world of fractions, if you remember, let me just take you back to something very basic. If I make a pizza here, and I'm going to shade in this half to show you that this is the part we have, and this is the part that's been eaten. So we have 1/2 of a pizza, right? If I were to divide this up into fourths, now I have 2/4 of a pizza. Do I have any more pizza? No, I don't. If I can't break this up into 6s because just the way it's broken up. If I break it up into 8s, now I have 4 pieces divided up into 8s. All these 3 fractions essentially mean the very same thing. Bigger numbers don't mean that we have more in the world of fraction. In fact, the bigger the number on the bottom, the smaller it's been broken up into, isn't it? The smaller the pieces. All right, so that's just a little reminder of the way fractions work. So when we make equivalent fractions, we're not making bigger fractions, we're making the same fraction with just different numbers. And we learned how to do this, so down when we get it at the bottom, and we find out we can't add fractions or subtract fractions unless they have the same denominator. This is why we learned how to do this. So you do this by what times 2 was 4? Well, it was 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. And you probably know how to do this without me even helping you. 4 times 2 is 8, so 2 times 2 is 4. 8 times 2 is 16. 4 times 2 is 8. 16 times 2 is 32. 8 times 2 is 16. All right, really easy. So now if you look at D, 7 times what was 49? What was 7 times 7, wasn't it? So then 6 times 7 would be 42. And those are all real easy. Reducing to lowest terms, we're still making equivalent fractions, but instead of making bigger numbers, we're going down to the two smallest numbers that this fraction could be. So I see on this one that 7 goes into itself and it goes into 14. 7, so this time when we're doing lowest terms, we divide. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 14 divided by 7 is 2. Sometimes the top number doesn't go into the bottom number, like in D. 4 does not go into 6. So I have to find another number that goes into both. And that number would be 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. Write each fraction as a decimal. Another thing that we have learned this year is that fractions and decimals are essentially the same thing. If you see 0.36, that is 36 in the hundredths place, right? So essentially that is 36 over 100, and I could reduce that if I wanted to. All right, 1/4. We have been memorizing these. If you cannot remember these, I think all of these we've been memorizing. If you can't remember it, you can just simply do 1 divided by 4. I'll do one here for you. 1 divided by 4, and you're going to add a decimal and a 0. So bring a decimal up here. 4 goes into 10 twice. That's 8. Remainder of 2. Make another 0. 4 into 20, 5. And we memorized that it was 0.25. But if you don't remember, that's what you can do. Some of them are repeating, like for instance, 1/3. So it would be 1 divided by 3 if you can't remember. If you can remember, just put it. But 3 goes into 10 3 times, so now it's 0.3. And you notice 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. If I add another 0, guess what happens? I just get this 3 repeating over and over. So you can just write 0.3 with a repeating sign above it. Compare the pairs of fraction. Write the greater fraction in the blank. So in order to compare them, they have to have the same denominator. And as I look at this first one, I see that 4 and 8, the smallest denominator can be 8 because 4 goes into 8 evenly. So this one does not change. 4 times 2 is 8, the two denominators there. 4 times 2 would be 8. So 3 times 2 would be 6. After I do that, then I know that 7/8 is bigger than 6/8. So I need to write the greater one. And number 5, write each percent as a fraction. So these are just simply 50% is the same as 0.50, right? So that's 50 over 100, reduced to lowest terms. I can get rid of those zeros. 5 over 10 is 1/2. Okay? All right. Down here at the bottom, I will do, I'm going to do C with you. I'm going to do B and C. And I know you know how to do this. So if you just want to skip it and go on your own, you're thinking, oh, this is too easy. I don't mind. I'm just doing this just to help you guys remember at the end of the year here. Now, before I can add these, I have a 4 and a 2 and a 12. So when I have 3 different denominators, I always personally look at the biggest one. And I look at the biggest one, which is 12. And I say, well, does 2 go into 12? Sure does. Does 4 go into 12? Sure does. So let's make all of them 12. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 6 is 12. 1 times 6 is 6. 12, and this one doesn't change. So I have a 9 and a 6 and a 1, right? So that becomes 16 over 12. Multiple ways you could do this. I say it needs to be reduced. And I might go ahead and just reduce it right away because I always like to just get them to lowest terms. 4 goes into 16 and 12, doesn't it? So 4 goes into 16, 4. 4 goes into 12, 3. Okay, so I've made it 3 over 4. And that's going to be 1 1/3. Let's go to the whole number. 5, 2, 7, 8 is 15, 10, 16. I have 165 and 1 1/3, so that would be 166 and 1/3. All right, let's go down to B. 1 minus 6/7. You cannot do that because there's a blank right there. All right, so I have to borrow. I'm going to borrow from the 1, now it's gone, bring it over as 7 over 7. And I bring it over with the same denominator of the other number, of a number that equals 1, which 7 over 7 does. 7/7 minus 6/7 is 1/7. On this one, if I get a common denominator, which I see it's 8, so I'm just going to change this one and make it 4/8. I see that I can't do 3/8 minus 4/8. So I'm going to have to borrow from that 7 and make it a 6. Now I bring over 8/8 to that 3/8, and now I have 11/8 on top. 11 minus 4 is 7/8. Then I'm going to just do the whole number. And I think I get 77 7/8. All right, let's go to the next page. Make sure this is, well, we're not moving for some reason. Weird. I'm gonna pause you guys. Try to get to the next page. All right, here we go. I got it. Oh, let's see here. These are pretty easy. I'm gonna let you go on this one. Let's look at the story problems down at the review. John bought a new shirt that was marked $36. He bought it for 1/4 less than the marked price. How much did he pay? All right, so 1/4, let's put, there's several different ways we could do this. Let me show you the 2 different ways you could do this. You could leave it in fractions. So if it's 1/4 off though, the question is how much he paid. So he doesn't pay the 1/4, he pays what's left. And isn't 1/4 plus 3/4 4/4, right? So the 1/4 is the percent off. The 3/4 is what he has to pay. So we can do 36 times 3/4. And this one's nice and easy because it's going to work out, because 4 goes into 36 9 times, and I'm left with 27. So $27. Now it doesn't always come out perfectly like that, so fractions can get a little hairy. So another thing you could do is you could say, well, 1/4 is 25%, right? We learned that. So 3/4 is 75%. So I could do the $36, sorry, let me fix that, times 0.75, because that's what I'm going to have to pay. And watch what happens. Two places, and guess what I get? I get the same answer. Decimals are really easier than fractions, so if you can change it to a, if you're able to change it to a decimal, a fraction, a percent, thank you, then I would, if they're not looking for fractional parts or something like that. All right, I'm going to erase all this. Let's look at the next one. Olivia is reading a map with a scale of 1/4 inch equals 50 miles. How far apart on the map are 2 towns that are separated by a distance of 450 miles? So what I have to figure out is how many 1/4 inches we have, right? So I'm going to do 450 divided by 50, and these can both go. So we have 45 divided by 5, which is 9, right? So how many 1/4 is that? Well, 9 times 1/4 is just 9/4. 4 goes into 9 twice, with 1 left over. So we have a total. It says how far apart on the map is it? Well, if every 50 miles is 1/4 of an inch, we have 2 1/4 inch. Okay? Area is super easy. They're not even converting anything. Fill in the blanks at the bottom. Number 12, 1/3 of a yard is how many feet? So you're going yard to feet, larger to smaller. There's 3 feet in a yard, so it's 1/3 times 3, which what does that give you? 1. 1/3 of a yard is 1 foot. Feet to inches, larger to smaller. So it's going to be 1/4 times how many inches are in a foot? 12. And what did we get? You get 3. 3/5 of a century is how much of a year? So there's larger to smaller, multiply. 3/5 times how many years are in a century? 100. And this can cross cancel. And the answer is 60. See if there's one where no. I don't see any where you're dividing. You're multiplying all of these. Do you remember how many bushels or how many pecks are in a bushel? Remember there's 8 quarts in a peck and 4 pecks in a bushel. Okay? All right. I'm going to leave you at that with this. I'm going to leave you here and you'll be just fine. Just do the black and you'll be done in no time. Have a good day.